Welcome to Inspired Living with Marc Lainhart, the intuitive prospector. Every Wednesday, Marc, along with his special guests, will explore thought-provoking topics and ideas that promote creativity, self-help, healing, happiness, and well-being to inspire you on your spiritual journey. Each week, Marc will discuss different paths to achieving a more spiritual, balanced, happy, and healthy lifestyle. Topics will elevate consciousness and range from metaphysics to the human and social experience and all things spiritual. Welcome to an inspired community that offers support, encouragement, and new ways of thinking. Marc is a tested, certified, and professional spiritual medium, metaphysical teacher, healer, and spiritual advisor with a spiritual practice based in Seattle, Washington. You are the inspired and the inspiration.
Get on the boat, ride the waves, trust life, savor life, live in wonder. That is a quote from the book that we're going to be discussing today. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Wherever you may be in this beautiful, amazing, healing, resting planet of ours, this is Inspired Living Radio. I am your host, Marc Lainhart. Thank you so much for taking your time today to join us for this live show. I'm going to be welcoming our special guest here just in a few minutes, live from the East Coast, and we're going to be having some inspiration, and we always like to say, be inspired, inspire others, inspire before we expire is always what we do here on Inspired Living Radio. And I hope that you are staying safe. I hope that you are staying healthy. And I hope that you are staying properly informed during these unprecedented times in our history. And again, thank you for tuning in. We're going to do our best to give you a great 60 minutes of inspiration, encouragement. We're going to be talking about meditation. We're going to be talking about yoga. We're going to be talking about riding the big waves of life and all the changes that are before us. If you want to learn more about the work I'm doing, you can find me at marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector. Love to help you do a little spiritual prospecting for your own spiritual healing, spiritual transformations, and of course your own spiritual goal. You can catch me every Monday morning for my live Facebook and YouTube show, Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, followed by the Healing Cafe, where I do conversations direct with the global audience, live chats, free readings, Q&A. It's a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. And if you want to subscribe to my YouTube channel, I'd love to have you get on board, where there's over 5 seasons of Inspired Living Radio, 2 seasons of Metaphysical Mocha Mondays, interviews, hikes, dives, all just spiritual awesomeness for the soul adventure. If you want to catch any of the encore shows that do stream through OMTimes Radio throughout the week, if you don't catch the live broadcast today, we got you covered through iTunes, YouTube, SoundCloud, Podbean, marclainhart.com, and of course, all 5 seasons of Inspired Living Radio can be found over on OMTimes Radio Archives. Thanks so much for hanging out with us today. And if you want to post a question to our social media pages, we will be monitoring the Facebook page, which is Inspired Living Radio, where you can join the global listening base of inspired listeners all around the planet. We're over 1,400 members now, so thank you for joining the page and being a part of this inspirational community. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram under the handle Inspired4Us. That is the number 4. And I always like to give a shout out or a positive affirmation or a Inspired Living Radio shout out. I want to just, again, thank you to all of our heroes of healthcare that are out there on the front lines, any essential workers that are out there keeping the stores open, the railways, transporting food and supplies, grocery stores, keeping the shelves stocked. We appreciate you, we see you, we honor you. You are the true heroes during this point in our history, and I just want to say thank you. Also, with the positive mantra, we're going to take it right from Coby's book. I am creating this healthy boundary for the sake of allowing my heart to open more and feel more. And that's what we're going to do over the course of the hour. We're going to do a little spiritual prospecting for your own spiritual goal. And I'm going to bring Coby on here in just a second, but I'm going to read just a short bio for her. Coby Kozlowski is the author of 1 Degree Revolution, How the Wisdom of Yoga Inspires Small Shifts That Lead to Big Changes, senior faculty member at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health and the Esalen Institute, and has been featured on the cover of Yoga Journal and Mantra Wellness, and was named one of the 7 yoga teachers who have changed the practice. Her vibrant and inclusive style as a speaker, contemporary yoga and meditation educator, life coach trainer, and author, is infused with both practical wisdom and heartfelt humor. Coby is the creator of Quarter Life Calling, Creating an Extraordinary Life in Your 20s. I wish I would have read that in my 20s. Karma Yoga Leadership Intensive, a 1 Degree Revolution. You can also check her out on the TED Talks, 1 Degree Revolution, Small Shift and Big Changes. Creator of the Kripalu Vinyasa, and is a lead trainer for the Radiance, Sutras, Meditation, Teacher Training. You can find more about Coby at cobyk.com. Coby, welcome to Inspired Living Radio.
Marc, thanks. Wow, you're on fire. You do a lot, so thanks for doing all that you're doing.
Well, thank you.
I should interview you.
A little bit of a tongue twister.
Yeah, good. But man,
thanks so
you're
much
really
for
putting a lot out. You're putting a lot out there, Marc. It's like really, it is inspiring. So thank you.
Well, we need it, right? We need that encouragement. We need that inspiration. We need that healing. We're going through a lot of changing times in our history and within society and the planet. The planet is literally changing before our eyes. Today is I kind of follow exploration as a prospector myself, and we're getting ready to launch for the first time in over a decade astronauts into space on American soil. That's going to be taken, I think, right after the show is over. I think they're going to be launching into space. So a lot of changes going on, and sometimes those small shifts that we see right now literally lead to big changes, don't they?
Well, that's it. And, one of the things, just listening to you speak, it's just that reminder. It's like, I think if we can take a step back, even though there is so much going on right now, but the nature of consciousness, life, whatever you want to call it, it's always changing, right? So it's like life is change. How can we be open to it? How can we be with it? And can we be with this, whatever the this is, right? And so right now we're with the infinite possibilities of change and both beauty and terror, and both the inspiring and the horrific. And it's like, to me, that's where I get interested, and I imagine you get interested in this kind of work. It's like, how can we both celebrate that which is beautiful, but also recognize, like, wow, like, we've got some work to do. I think most of us would agree, particularly probably your listeners, most of us would agree we can probably do better than we're doing. And so, my hope is, I just think it's like, I just hope each one of us wants to contribute in some small way. And I think we can get caught up in that we have to do it all versus, I mean this like in a positive way, but like most likely a couple generations from now, most of us are going to be forgotten, right? So it's like, to me, what's more interesting is what can I contribute to the tapestry of existence in the hopes that we will uplift, we will inspire, we will participate to an evolved society. And, that's really where my hope is, just to be part of the conversation, part of the evolution in some kind of small way.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's why, the tagline for the show is to be inspired, to inspire others, and to inspire before we expire. Because you're right, in a couple of generations from now, I hope that my podcast will somehow, some way resonate through history, and somebody 100 years from now goes back and listens to this ancient podcast and goes, wow, there was a lot going on back then, but is it much different than, 100 years in the future? I don't know. We'll find out. But you said one thing, and, what I was watching your TED Talk, Coby, I love that you have that practical wisdom that you bring to the stage, but also just heartfelt humor. And I think we need more of that. We need more humor. We need more laughter. And you talked about the changes in life that we're going through. And in your book, we have a lot in common, because I always talk about being a big kahuna, a wave surfer, big wave surfer. And in your book, you talk about becoming a wave rider and what that means. And also, let's get on the boat. Some people don't want to get off the boat. Some people don't want to get on the boat. So let's talk about your book. Let's jump right into it before we get to our first break. As far as how yoga and the wisdom of yoga, let's start there, and then we'll get into the small steps and then the big changes.
Yeah, for me, it's like sometimes I come from a background of a contemporary yoga perspective. And, when I was writing the book, I actually dance with the idea of not even mentioning the word yoga at all, because I think often when people hear the word yoga, they think downward facing dog, they think yoga pants, they think yoga studios. And for me, you know, there's currently 37 definitions that I work with when I talk about yoga. And so when I'm talking about yoga, I'm talking about this particular definition that I like the most. How do we skillfully participate and engage with the movement of life itself, right? Life is changing. And how do we participate? How do we engage? And is it skillful? And I always say that yoga is a path that provides, you know, no answers. There's no answer. Like, to me, at least, I think anyone that says, like, this is the answer, this is the right way, I always get a little bit suspicious. And so for me, I would say that yoga is a path that provides zero answers, but infinite inquiries and experiments to learn to ride the waves of life more skillfully, whatever wave is coming in, right? So it's like, we never know what's around the corner. There's always something that's going to be concealed to us. But to me, the wisdom of yoga has really supported me saying, okay, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but how can I show up to this, right? Like, this is what's happening. And, you know, not to say that I've mastered anything, but I'm deeply interested, and I'm deeply interested in sharing what's worked and what's helpful for other people to put themselves into the inquiry and the experiment of their own lives to become better wave riders, right? And ultimately getting on the boat is just saying, are you interested? You don't need to know how to do it, but are you at least interested in participating and showing up? And, you know, my belief is that transformation doesn't mean you have to do everything, because I think it can get overwhelming in the wellness world of like, well, where do I begin? And I really think, like, first you got to say, yes, I'm interested. And then it's like, okay, to think about the metaphor I use in the book is that imagine a boat heading in one direction. And if that boat shifted course just 1 degree, what would happen over a week, a month, a year, or a lifetime is that that boat would end up in a totally different place. And so the book is invitations into inquiries and experiments to make that 1 degree shift individually. So that way, collectively, my hope is that if enough of us are interested, I don't even think it has to be everyone, just if enough of us are interested, that we really will start, you know, shifting the course of our own, like, whatever it is we're creating together into a more evolved society. Not to repeat myself, but like, that is the hope. It's like, okay, we can look around and it's pretty obvious where there's some places where we can do better. But I think it's easy to point the finger at everybody else.
Yeah, and there's that old concept when we're pointing the finger out at somebody, there's 3 fingers pointing back at us, right? So
well, that's it.
I agree with you. Just sometimes showing up, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with that single step, and that I am ready to show up and whatever that entails. And with life, there is a lot going on. It's very fast paced. There's a lot of turbulence, as you talk in the book. The rapid pace, the constant changing pace. Every 48 hours, it's breaking news with something, and it can be very overwhelming to people to be like, how do I detach? How do I, get out of this minutia of constant rapid fire drinking from a fire hose? And a lot of it's just showing up and setting that intention. And I love the nautical of the 1 degree. I spent 8 years in the U.S. Coast Guard, and we talked about proper planning of setting a course, just like a ship sets a course. And you're right. If you set your course and you're 1 degree off on your compass, you could find yourself in a completely different part of the world. And that's the same with life. We have to have planning. We have to have purpose and passion. We have to set our course. But we also know that the storms of life are going to sometimes take us off course, right? But sometimes we have to just keep moving forward, get those sea legs, as old coasties say, because you can't have the smooth seas without the storms and creating that strength. And I really liked in the book how you kind of open, it obviously captured my attention because you said, be a wave rider and get on the boat. And I'm like, well, I spent many years getting on boats and being in some pretty big waves. But also learning, the one thing that the Coast Guard taught me of anything was respect for Mother Nature. I respect and learned a lot about Mother Nature and how she's really in control. From 30-foot seas, I've been in some of the roughest conditions on the planet. And for me, that was very eye-opening of how quick she can change and be a teacher and inspire all at the same time. And boy, she's teaching us a lot right now as we all sit in quarantine or in some sort of isolation. And I thought it would be good to, address this with this book. And if people want to get this book, Coby, where can they go to get this book so they can engage with the conversation that we're having?
All places that books are sold. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all places. You can always ask your local bookstore, ask your library to get it, any way that we can hopefully get the message out more.
Awesome. And again, you can go to our Facebook page, Inspired Living Radio. Coby's website and her bio are right on the page, CobyK.com. So make sure to visit her site. We're going to be going to our first break here in just a second. But I just want to say thank you again to all of our inspired listeners all around the globe taking the time to tune into today's live show. We're going to be back here in about 2 minutes and keep the conversation going with Coby Kozlowski talking about 1 Degree Revolution, how the wisdom of yoga inspires small shifts that lead to big changes. We'll be back here in 2 minutes of Inspired Living Radio.
The future of internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM. Host your show on IOM FM, the radio network of OMTimes Media, one of the more recognized brand names in the conscious community, and is backed by the extensive marketing reach of OMTimes. Hosting a show on IOM FM immediately connects you with our extensive dedicated community. One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the intuitive prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream. Dare to explore. Dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.
Did you know that you have the power to change anything in your life? Did you know you can do so even with the things that you've already decided are impossible to change? Come join me, Venus Castleberg, on Outside the Impossible as I interview people from around the globe that have literally changed the things they thought were impossible to change just by using the amazing tools of Access Consciousness. Now airing Wednesdays 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Do you dare to believe that anything really is possible?
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to Inspired Living Radio, where you are the inspiration and the inspired. We thank you for tuning into today's live show with our first-time guest. She's never been on Inspired Living Radio, so we're welcoming guest speaker, life coach, trainer, yoga and meditation educator, and author of 1 Degree Revolution, How the Wisdom of Yoga Inspires Small Shifts that Lead to Big Changes. Coby Kozlowski, thanks for being here with us today and engaging in an inspirational conversation. And before the break, Coby, you were talking about the essence of yoga, and I agree with you. When I practice Qigong in the morning, it's not as intense as yoga, but you're right. When I think of yoga, I think of downward facing dog, I think of meditation or yoga centers or yoga clothing. And I want to talk about real quick, because you discuss in the book how to lead a life aligned with yoga principles without getting into the actual downward facing dog.
Right. Yeah, and because I really do think like some of the most quote unquote yogic people I know don't practice downward facing dog, and like there really are these different umbrellas of yoga. And again, I really consider myself a contemporary yoga educator. I'm not talking about what happened 1,000 years ago, and I come from a place of appreciating, right, of what came before me and saying, what can actually serve us to savor life more, right? Like a lot of people are suffering or having a hard time. They feel like they're stuck in that riptide of life. And for me, there is wisdom in the yoga teachings that can really serve us today. And, part of my hope is that the book, again, provides inquiries that it will help people make that 1 degree shift, but ultimately will help them feel, in a deeper place of alignment and tapping into what does it mean to be your authentic self, right? We use these words over and over and over again, but what does that actually mean? What does it mean to sit in the fire of transformation, to get comfortable being uncomfortable for the sake of what's on the other side? What does it mean to lean into sacred community, or to pause, to see life beyond fear, fantasies, and distortions, to have a relationship with both participating in life and, like you were saying earlier, recognizing that we can't predict what's going to happen. We don't know what's around the corner. And, I come from the school of thought, and I certainly don't think that anyone needs to think what I think. I just share what resonates with me, at least at this point, because I might learn something tomorrow and be like, you know what, I changed my mind. But that place of, I really come from a place that everything happens, period. We get to make up the reason rather than everything happens for a reason. And to me, that becomes an empowering seed of saying, okay, like this happened, whatever this is. Now, what beliefs have been created around this? Like what has happened to me physically, emotionally, spiritually? And where can I fully show up, participate, and check in where am I creating what we call in the yoga tradition a crime against wisdom, right? To me, that becomes the second place of transformation. At first, am I interested? Second, asking myself the question, where am I committing a crime against wisdom? And then to live the yoga, to skillfully participate and engage, simply ask the question, and what am I prepared to do about it? What experiment will I put myself in? And so if we start to look at this lens that yoga is about being beyond distortion, beyond fantasy. It's about tapping into what's true and real, about doing something about crimes against wisdom, and ultimately learning to ride the waves of life more skillfully. These are just some ideas of how do we live yoga, not do yoga. And so hopefully the book provides, a handful of hundreds of inquiries to dive into some of these thoughts and these ideas. So though I do think that I think it's beneficial to move your body, to have a relationship with your physical body. But I always say, I really don't care if anybody ever does downward facing dog. All I care about is, do you have a relationship with this container of consciousness that we call our physical body, right? Like, because I do believe that we talk about the multidimensional being. We have a physical body, a breath body, a mental body, a witness body, and this bliss body, this unseen connection between all things. And I think that one of the ways we can be in greater state of alignment is by connecting with all these bodies and having a healthy relationship with all these bodies, which one of them is your physical body. So there's many yoga teachers out there that's their main focus, and it's a beautiful doorway in to authenticity and alignment and consciousness and truth. It's just not the only way.
Yeah, very true. I have the same concepts of the physical body, the emotional body, the mental body, and the spiritual body. It's like what C.S. Lewis talked about. You don't have a soul, you are a soul, and you're here having a human experience in this vessel that we call the human body. I call it the physical flesh suit from time to time. And yeah, yoga is, the practice of yoga and just the concepts of yoga date back thousands of years. So we're not talking about really anything new, but you talk about in the book that yoga is contemporary. And just for our listeners out there, I wanted to get into that because you also talk about yoga is a technology. And I think those are two concepts that the listening audience would be interested in your perspective of what you mean by that when it comes to yoga.
Yeah, so I think, yoga is contemporary because like I was saying earlier, I don't proclaim to know what was happening 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago, 12,000 years ago. And from a place of, I hope, appreciation, I've been, invited into the doorway. One of the doorways of, human potential has been yoga philosophy. And, for me, yoga is contemporary. It is the sense of what can we learn from those that have come before us, right? Like, because I do think that there is these wisdom traditions. And I think you said you practice Qigong or Tai Chi?
Qigong, which is the mother of Tai Chi. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, I think that there's this sense of like these wisdom traditions that in some ways there's nothing new, right? Like we talked, I was saying earlier, like life is change, be open. That has been true since probably the beginning of time, So I just think all human beings have been on this passage of learning about being human and the mystery and the not knowing. I often say yoga is the path of getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, having no idea what's really going on. And, so the technology piece for me is saying, hey, here are these practical things that you can actually try on in this contemporary world. You don't need to, unless you want to, you don't need to leave your home, shave your head, go live in an ashram for the rest of your life, unless that is what is calling you, right? Like if that's what's calling you, I would say trust that. But I think that there's also technologies that can serve the physical body, that can serve the breath body, that can serve the mental body, the emotional body, the spiritual body, whatever you want to call it. And that's my hope, is that here are these practices that have been inspired from the past that are relevant in the world that we live in today.
I love that. And I was laughing because for my students that I teach in my spiritual development group, which just give them a shout out. A few of them are probably listening, because I always remind them to get comfortable being uncomfortable, because it's that flow, it's that uncertainty where you can tap into and really have, whether it's, through yoga, through meditation, psychic, mediumship, metaphysics, healing, transformation, it's all in that uncomfortable, transformational process. And you're right, the technology that we have today, where there's so many things at our fingertips that we can, access. Like I said, I checked out your TED Talk, which I found very inspirational and funny at times. I love the humor that you bring to what you do, and I think that's important. And you talk about in the book about activating your witness consciousness. And I think for the inspired listeners out there, I think that would be a little gold nugget, if you will, as we're all prospecting for our own spiritual gold. What do you mean by activating your witness consciousness?
Yeah, so I think there's many ways that people talk about this, and I think it is an inquiry for each and every one of us. But to me, the inquiry of, I'm interested in truth, like capital T truth. Does it exist? Does it not exist? Like, I don't even know if truth is something that is to, attain, but it's interesting to me. And so part of the practice of strengthening the witness or witness consciousness is really doing practices of noticing, of observation. And one of the teachings from one of the retreat centers I work at, Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health in the Berkshires, inspired by the teachings of Swami Kripalu. And what he used to say was that the highest form of any spiritual practice is self-observation without judgment. Now, I would change that if I can change all people's quotes. I would say that the highest form of spiritual practice is self-observation with compassion, because I don't necessarily think that having some judgment, discernment is a bad thing, but can we have compassion for whatever comes up? And so the practice of observation, can I notice, like, wow, like that critical part of me is arising, like, wow, the part of me that is disconnecting from my emotions is showing up. And rather than judging it, can I have compassion for that? Can I notice it? Can I observe it? And as many times as we can practice that throughout the day, my belief is, and again, simply my belief, but when we become aware of something, we then have greater choice. And when we have greater choice, we have a greater sense of freedom. When we have a greater sense of freedom, that becomes a greater portal into truth. And so, I think that there are more traditional practices of like a seated meditation practice that can be useful. But I also think throughout the day, we can be strengthening the witness by simply pausing and asking myself, am I seeing life clearly right now? Am I looking through a distorted lens? Is this a reaction to an old past wound or hurt? Or am I actually responding to what's showing up right now? And can I notice without needing to fix, change, or do? Can I breathe? Can I feel? Can I allow? Can I be with? Can I notice? And again, the part that wants to criticize or judge or, change or shift, that's really our mental body, right? But the witness body is the one that becomes just an observer to it all, a compassionate observer. And so I think that, do 10 1-minute mini meditations throughout the day of simply say this, what do I notice now? And notice if judgment comes up, you can just simply be like, wow, I'm noticing I'm judging. This. Okay. This. Keep strengthening, because I think the stronger that witness is, just the more that we can appreciate and cherish the gift of life. And I love what you said about inspire before we expire. I've heard a saying, it's like, can we live with death on one shoulder and eternity on the other? It's like, if death was here, if death was on one shoulder and it's like death is around the corner, tomorrow, the next day, how would we live? How would we engage? But at the same time, the paradox is, what if eternity's on the other shoulder? Like, we're going to be here forever. So how do we participate? How do we act? How do we, show up to life in that place of holding both potential truths?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just thinking, I'd add a third to that. When you come face to face with your own mortality, as I have a few times in life, once you realize that death is not the end, you really truly start living a life with a sense of freedom. But is that white light at the end of the tunnel you just popping out again and starting this all over again? Is there soul growth? Is there, everybody has different belief systems, but yep. For me, it's about the magic in the moment. It's about that carpe diem. It's about seizing the day. And I love the witness body. I love the witness consciousness. I definitely relate to that as far as, the mental construct of our mind and our thoughts, and that inner voice, that ego voice, that self-sabotager that's always talking to us, and sometimes just stepping out of that mindset just to observe and do it with, compassion. I always remind, especially right now in this day and age with where we're at, I always remind people to be kind, caring, and compassionate. And even during difficult times, we can always find a way to be kind. And that's why I do the work that I do. That's why I have this radio show, is to bring that ripple effect, that energy, and have, awesome guests like you on to talk about this from a different perspective. Because in the art of, whether it's yoga or spiritualism, as a spiritualist, it's the art of shifting perspectives as well that brings a lot of growth and transformation. My mentors always told me that, change is inevitable, but growth is optional. And we know that great things never come from the comfort zones. So great things are going to come from where we find ourselves right now. And, whether you engage with yoga or qigong or meditation, but also engaging that witness consciousness of what's going on and being that observer, because I truly believe that, Coby, that many things through observation can unfold and transform your life. And you talk about yoga as an inquiry as well in the book, and I just wanted to kind of just go over that real quick. As that, what you meant by what is yoga as an inquiry. And then you had mentioned it just a second ago about the power of pause, which I think a lot of people don't do, and that they just go, and then wonder, later in life why their body says no. So I want to talk about the power of the pause, and I want to get your perspective on yoga as an inquiry.
Yeah, so, I think I started out that way of really saying that I don't come from a place of saying, like, these are the answers, this is the truth. It's really, can I be in the mystery? Can I be in the not knowing? Can I be in the practice? Can I be in the unfolding? Can I trust the intelligence of consciousness itself and recognize that something is concealed? Another season will be around the corner. And so for me, it is about, coming back to that question of, like, where am I committing a crime against wisdom? Where is my potential to grow? And what do I want to do about it? So, what came to mind when I was thinking about, these small shifts is just one of my favorite quotes is, are your words an improvement upon silence? Like, that's an inquiry, right? That's a practice of strengthening the witness. I like that. And, I would say, like, if your words are not an improvement upon silence, then why are you talking? Now, for those people that tend to not speak up, don't use this as an excuse to not talk, right? Don't be like, well, it's not an improvement, it's not silence. But I think so often, whether it's to another person, online, wherever it might be, it's just like, why are we saying what we're saying? And it's not to say that we can't speak truth. It's not to say that we can't be angry. It's not to say that we can't, want to fight for justice. It's to say, is it helpful? Is it moving us in a direction that your best guess, because again, there's no answers, that it's going to serve? And so for me, I think that could be an inquiry, right? Like, are my words an improvement upon silence? Another inquiry could be, and the book is full of inquiries. That's what the whole book is, really. Another inquiry is really checking in with, is what I say, think, feel, and do in alignment with each other? And if they're not, what's one small thing I could do today to become in a greater state of alignment? It could also be, you talked about the self-sabotaging part of our brain. Again, can I be compassionate to that part of myself and not shame myself for having a brain that does brain things? So maybe just being compassionate in itself could be a 1 degree shift that could change the entire course of your life. Or, I often come back to this inquiry for myself of the power of asking for help. It's like I was telling you earlier, my best friend, Danny Arguetti, lives in Seattle, and my other best friend, Katie Brower, in California, have been such allies and supporting and encouraging me. And I feel so honored to have this sacred community and so many other people in my life. But to be able to lean in into somebody to ask for help in itself is an inquiry for many people, right? Like, I tell a story in the Tedx talk about being stuck in the maze. And it's like, too often we're stuck in the maze of our own life, the imprisonment of our own life. And the greatest inquiry could be to be daring and courageous enough to ask for help. And then if someone doesn't show up, you don't go to, well, see, no one's ever there for me. It's simply like, wow, maybe they're riding a wave too, and maybe I need to ask somebody else. And then also checking in, and do I show up for people? Do I serve people? Do I help people when I'm feeling like I'm riding the waves of life more skillfully? So, for me, this begins this conversation of living yoga. Inquiry is the yoga. And, it's always like, and now yoga, and now another inquiry, and now another inquiry. And, I could spend a lifetime just talking to you about inquiries, of like, and then there's this, and then there's that. But that's why I love that question. Where are you committing a crime against wisdom? Because that, to me, is a finger pointing to the moon of, that's where you begin. There it is. There's the inquiry to go into. Yeah,
I love that.
I could go on.
Yeah, no, we're gonna take our last break here, but when we come back, we're gonna talk about meditation. We're gonna talk about the power of the pause, and again, 1 degree separation or even 1% can mean the difference between a human and a chimpanzee. So that 1% shift can take you a long way on your journey. So we'll be back here in just a few minutes with our special guest, Coby Kozlowski, talking about her new book that is out, and we'll be back here in 2 minutes.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Have you wondered how to change your love paradigm? The secret key is finding a love partnership, not just a regular connection. How do you find these? Through conscious relationships. Ascending Hearts Dating is a dating site for people like you that believes in second chances and a different type of spiritual connection. Try Ascending Hearts for free at ascendinghearts.com and change your love paradigm. Ascending Hearts, the premier dating community for the spiritually awake.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me The Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Opiates has taken everything and everyone I've ever loved away from me. Everything. I blew my ankle out and I got prescribed pain pills by my doctor. If making my detox public is going to help somebody, I'm all for it. I just wish I would have had a warning.
Opioid dependence can happen after just 5 days. Know the truth, spread the truth. A message from Truth, the Ad Council, and ONDCP.
And welcome back to Inspired Living Radio. That was our last break, so we're going to get right back into it, talking about the small changes. And I agree with you, Coby, that small changes eventually add up to huge results, right? In that 1 degree shift that you were talking about in your book, 1 degree revolution, how the wisdom of yoga inspires small shifts that lead to the big changes. And if you want to check out the book, you can go to CobyK.com. You can find her on YouTube with her TED Talks. You can, click on the Inspired Living Radio Facebook page and get to the links that are posted there as well. So, Coby, I want to just get right back into it because this last half of the show just cruises by so quickly. And I want to talk about the power of the pause, your different approach to meditation. And then I want to read... at the end here, I want to read from the book itself about what yoga is and kind of just give the listening audience a perspective of what you've written. But let's talk about the power of the pause. Let's talk about the different approach to meditation because like yoga, people have connotations and ideas of what yoga is. Just like with meditation, they think you got to get in a certain pose, you got to get, wear certain clothes, you got to be a guru, and it's none of that. So I just want to get your approach on meditation.
Great. So everything I know about the perspective of meditation that I share and that I teach comes from my teacher, Lauren Roche. And everybody on the planet needs to know this person. So he, I've known him for, over a decade now and has really taught me to look at meditation from a totally different perspective. And he did a translation of a text called the Vijnana Bhairava Tantra, which loosely translates as the terror and the joy of realizing the oneness with the soul. He calls his interpretation of this book the Radiance Sutras. And this book, if you read the intro to it, it sounds like a conversation between two lovers. And in it, Shakti is asking Shiva, how do I experience more of the divine in everyday life? And in reply, Shiva's like, I'm so glad you asked. I have 112 answers for you. And so this book it sounds like a book of poetry, but it's actually an instruction manual on meditation. And it's a different perspective. And, for those listeners that have children, it's kind of like you can love both of your children and they can be totally different. And so I always tell people, if you're interested in another doorway of meditation, in some ways it's like putting one baby down to pick up another baby, but you can love them both. You can love them all. There's infinite love to be spread. So this approach to meditation really is about falling in love with life and falling in love with the fluctuations and the movement of life, celebrating life. And we would say that this particular path is a doorway into accessing the divine. And again, if you don't like that word, just replace it with whatever you do like. But it's accessing the divine that is everywhere, infusing everything. Like there's no ladder to be climbed. There's nothing to transcend. There's nowhere else to go but right here. And can we hold the pulsation of life, the movement of life, that it's not about stillness. And from our approach, we would never say that you have a monkey mind, right? Like in some ways, what Lauren always says, it's like, that's a shaming way to look at it. Like, why would you shame your brain for functioning? And for many people, the meditation instructions that they've been given were intended for those that have chosen a renunciate path, that have chosen to renounce the earthly world. And so this approach to meditation is very much about those people that want to live in the sensory world. And again, both are beautiful. Not one is better than the other. It really just is a different way of accessing and appreciating and celebrating and honoring life rather than trying to get out, escape, impose, control. And again, it's just different perspectives, and it's really meant for those of us that are choosing more of a day-to-day life in the meditation world. And this particular approach to meditation, it's about honoring it all. And, you know, when I met Lauren, my whole life really shifted and changed. I actually read one of the sutras that I actually have in the book that when I read it, it was like, it was a huge awakening to my own heart and to love and to my own truth and to my own like places where I've just been was like gaps of awareness of just not seeing clearly. And I wish we could have an hour, just a lifetime, just talking about how beautiful this particular approach is and this particular text. And one of the things that I would say, I think too many people are saying that yoga and meditation are like the answers. It's like the prescription, you know, it's like, take this. Right. I do not come from the school of thought that yoga and meditation is for everybody, right? Like, I do think that I think everyone should have a great therapist. I think everybody should, you know, like there's other people to have in your toolbox, for lack of better words, or other practices. So I do think that, you know, if someone's meditating and they're ruminating on thoughts that are potentially harmful, like, know that your meditation should be go and find a great therapist or a great coach or a great friend to work some things out. And so I say that just as a side note, because I think often people can think that I'm like, you know, this is the answer, do this. But I don't think that. I think that there's many things that we can do to serve us. And meditation to me is one of them. And it really is an opportunity to fall in love with life, to celebrate the life force itself, this mystery, this thing that put it all into motion. And in that text that I was talking about, there's these 112 meditations or doorways, everything from, you know, there's one of the lines, one of the texts says, sting of a wasp, rip of a nail. In this lacerating moment, pain is all you know. Life is tattooing scripture into your flesh. The wound becomes the portal. The wound becomes this portal. And right, those are just a few lines from one particular meditation saying, go this way. There's another sutra that says, enter the bowl of vastness that is the heart and give yourself to it with abandon. Quiet ecstasy is there and a steady regal sense of resting in the perfect spot. Once you know the way, the nature of attention will call you to return again and again and again and be saturated with knowing, I belong here. I'm at home here. Answer that call. So again, these sound like poems, but they're instructions to your heart, really, to go in. And sometimes meditation can feel like it's rolfing for your soul, right? It can feel like, whoo, working out that old ache and pain. And sometimes it can feel like this beautiful, gentle, soft space. But we would say it's all sacred. It's all beautiful, even when you're meditating and going through your to-do list. Like, that it doesn't have to be this separate thing. So, you know, I wish I had more than a couple minutes to dive into all the different avenues, but I would encourage every one of your listeners, yourself included, get him on the show. His name is Lauren Roche, and really just he would, I don't know if he would appreciate this, but I really believe he is a mad scientist of the heart, a master of the doorway of love and joy and wonder. So anyways, I know that it doesn't get very specific, but it is, our aim is to celebrate it all, and not to say that other traditions don't. It's just different. Like, we can move in our practice, we can dance, we can sing, we can, you know, like, there's so many practices, and we would say that if you don't look forward to your meditation practice, then it's not your meditation. Like, that there is something else, and that it's the most natural thing that we can do as human beings, right? That moment of holding a newborn baby and dropping in, or looking your dog in their eyes and just falling in love, or gazing at a sunset, or eating your favorite food, like, all can be doorways into meditation. And so can sitting on your cushion cross-legged and focusing on your breath, right? So what I love about it is it's inclusive and it's freeing, and there's no shame in it. And I just think that is such a liberating way to be in practice of, like, wow, like, freedom, real taste of freedom, an embodied taste of freedom.
Yeah, and I like how you said just honor it all. And, you know, we have to honor it all, the good, the bad. the joy, the pain, and show up to it. Rumi reminds us that the cure for the pain is the pain. And I want to just take a second to read from the book before the show ends on, the different practices of meditation that you were just talking about, the different approaches to meditation. And I like how you said that yoga and meditation are not the cure-all, but part of the journey is prospecting to explore and discover through body, mind, and spirit, as I always say. And I do want to read just from the book for our listeners to just give them a sample of what they can expect when they purchase your book. You can go to Coby's website, cobyk.com. You can find her on her on YouTube for the TED Talks. And again, the book is 1 Degree Revolution, How the Wisdom of Yoga Inspires Small Shifts That Lead to Big Changes. And I always say one small step can change your life. But I want to read from the book what yoga is and how the shifts can lead to big changes, and kind of tie into exactly what you were just talking about, Coby, about honoring everything, because yoga is a path to unveil what is true and real. Yoga is becoming intimate with all of life. Yoga is living in wonder. Yoga is riding the waves. Yoga is an art and a science. Yoga is authenticity. Yoga is integrity. Yoga is accountability. Yoga is community. Yoga is walking through the sacred fire. Yoga is freedom within boundaries. Yoga is holding on and letting go. Yoga is savoring. Yoga is learning to trust that life changes and to be open to those changes. Yoga is living your purpose. Yoga is a path of transformation. Yoga is a practice for life. And that's the one of the chapters here in 1 Degree Revolution, how the wisdom of yoga and everything that yoga is, how it inspires small shifts that lead to big changes. So just with the time we have left here, Coby, anything else that you want to talk about in this book that we maybe didn't get to within the next few minutes here, just to share with our inspired listeners?
Yeah, I think for me, it really is just, can we do our small part? Can we do whatever it takes to listen to what's trying to call us? Can we be daring to say yes to that calling? Can we tap into and connect to our most authentic self, line up what we say, what we think, what we feel, what we do, and then also learn to tolerate the consequences of being ourselves? Where do we need to clean up any messes along the way? Lean into our sacred community, ask for help, be there for others, because we really are in this together. Learn to sit in the fire, right? What does it mean to stay? And so often I think we can show up 95%, and it's that last 5% that counts, because when we stay long enough, there's something on the other side that we will only know from an embodied place if we do it, right? And that doesn't mean to stay if you're harming yourself, but stay when you're deeply called, when you're called to truth, when you're called to your dharma, your purpose. And when we stay long enough, we become aware. It's like we can do that pause, that sacred pause. And a pause can be a breath, a pause can be an hour, a pause can be a lifetime, whatever you decide that pause is, for the sake of seeing beyond the fears, the fantasies, the distortions. So that way, when we act, we can do it from a skillful place. So that way we can try to be as in integrity as we possibly can, if not have uncommon integrity. And, and then ultimately I would say, for me, this is deeply an inquiry of mine of surrender, right? What does it mean to surrender? Again, we say these words over and over and over again, and there's a difference between knowing the words or knowing the menu and eating the food, right? So it's what does it mean to surrender, to truly trust the cycles of life, to trust the process, to trust the unfolding, and to contribute in any way that we think is skillful or helpful?
Mm-hmm. Knowing the path, walking the path. If not now, when, right? When in doubt, choose change. So, Coby, it's been an honor having you on Inspired Living Radio today. Again, if you want to learn more about the work Coby is doing, you can visit her site at cobyk.com. Love to have you back for maybe a part 2. We can continue to dive into this or any new projects. I'm sure you're going to have new projects coming up with what you're doing, but keep up the great work, keep inspiring people, keep up that positive, encouraging energy. And again, if you want to check out the book, 1 Degree Revolution, How the Wisdom of Yoga Inspires Small Shifts That Lead to Big Changes by Coby Kozlowski. Coby, thank you so much for being on Inspired Living Radio today.
Thank you so much.
Look forward to having you back. And for our inspired listeners out there, thank you for tuning in. We'll be back here in 2 weeks with another fantastic show and an awesome guest. And again, thank you to Coby for coming on Inspired Living Radio and just sharing her knowledge and wisdom and soul adventures with all of you around the world. Going to leave you with a John Wooden quote: "Failure is not fatal, but failing to change might be." We'll be back here for another episode of Inspired Living Radio here on OMTimes. Thanks for tuning in. Be inspired, inspire others. Inspire before we expire. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Namaste.